We have a super chat.
Yeah, I see that.
Do you want to read
From
it?
Jeff Wilson.
Good old Jeff.
Yes.
Jeff Wilson. Thank you, Jeff, for everything.
What if Jeff Wilson, our good friend, asks, what if Lucas was asked to guest direct an episode of Kenobi? How would that be received? Would his style differ from when he last directed the PT, the prequel trilogy? So I was like, Phantom Tennis. No, that's man, that's a good question. James, do you have something right away?
Yeah, I can go over that for sure. So there was rumors that he was going to do an episode of The Mandalorian. Obviously, that was not the case. I think when George Lucas first sold to Disney, and I don't think this is all in Iger's book. Iger wanted possession of Lucasfilm, and he didn't want Lucas hovering over what he didn't own anymore. And I think enough time has gone now, and I think Disney has learned that Star Wars while a lot of Star Wars fans are the absolute best, we just talked about earlier, a lot of them are the absolute worst. I think George Lucas learned that the hard way in the prequels, and Disney learned that again. And I think the dust has settled now, and Disney has... There's two sides to this, but Disney has kind of... I think they're comfortable in their Star Wars now, because of The Mandalorian more so than the sequel trilogy, I would say. Because the sequel trilogy, again, was, I think, them trying to branch off from Lucas Star Wars, but kind of dipping their toe in there still. Like, they weren't fully out. But with The Mandalorian now, they're pretty much out. And then if it's High Republic in 2022 or whatever, they can completely remove themselves from it. Obi Wan...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, look, and then with the Solo fiasco, when all that happened, George Lucas directed a scene for Ron Howard in Solo.
Okay.
And now that might be mostly because of Ron Howard, his relationship with him, but it also shows that there was an extra step taken with this whole new regime in George Lucas, where they're like, okay, you can come back, and you could sprinkle in your magic and touch in it. And I think Obi Wan Kenobi is a character that he created through and through, aside from the Clone Wars, and for the most part he was, I mean, except for season 7, I guess, it's still him. Obi Wan Kenobi has always been told through George Lucas's eyes.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
And I think if he was willing to do it, he might not want to, but if he was willing to do it, I think respectfully, I think Disney now, Lucasfilm now would, for sure. And I think it would be received very well, because I also think the other thing too is Deborah Chow. I mean, Deborah Chow is directing every single episode of Kenobi, so it won't happen. But if she was like, "You want to come in and do episode 3 or 4?" and he's like, "Yeah, you know, why not?" He would. I think because he's the producer that he is, more so than the director, he would still do it in the style that Deborah Chow had that series going through, so you wouldn't even notice that it was George Lucas. But I think out of respect, it would be received very well, and I think it would actually be very good on Lucasfilm and Disney to have something like that happen in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think like George Lucas doing anything with Star Wars is something they got to keep in their back pocket for the next couple of years, because it's just sort of like, oh, by the way, here's a new thing from George Lucas after 30 years maybe, or however it's long, like definitely 20, right? Well, like, I think I don't know if Obi-Wan's the right place. I agree with you. It's like only really been told through his, like, if he's gonna do Obi-Wan, he has to do the whole thing, I think. You know what I mean?
And it's already Deborah Chow
directing. But yeah, exactly. I would give him some kind of film that could be put on there.
This is where I think the film, though, I don't think they would let him do that.
Like a film on Disney Plus, though.
Oh, okay.
Which I know they said they wouldn't really do that, but whatever. Rules can be broken. I think it's to go back to Jeff's question, how would it be received? I think that's just a moneymaker right there. They're like, it's like, oh, did you not like the new Star Wars? Well, guess what? Grandpa's back. that's how you market the whole movie, and you're like, oh, George Lucas, oh boy, you know. Like, and I think his style would definitely be different, because I think you direct or create dependent on it, like who you are at the time affects how you do it. So like the George Lucas of the original trilogy, I don't know if he was married. Maybe I don't know. I don't know his whole history. I know there's a indie film about him being in love, but
That's a good movie, but I own
like,
it on
that.
iTunes, and I love it. George Lucas in Love.
Like George Lucas, the director of the original trilogy, he's the rebel. He's like the new hothead. He's like, oh, he's gonna change how things work. And then, you get to the prequels where he's been known as George Lucas, like one of the biggest directors or like innovators in film in the last like 40 years or 30 years, maybe 20 years, whatever it was. That changes you, right? You're like, well, people like what I do, so I'm just going to do what I like to do. So perhaps after this, having sold Star Wars, like now he's like, well, I can see people do good things with what I've created. Maybe that's humbling. So like that's how I think it'll change. Plus how old is he now? He's in his 70s, right?
Yeah, he's up there. I don't know how old he is.
Yeah, like I don't know. It's like it'll be like Star Wars, but like The Irishman, where you're like, this is like, oh, this feels like Scorsese, but with old people.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.